Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Meehan Mission Podcast. Today's episode is one of my favorites because we are talking about milestones in childhood development. And our special guest is Dr. Laura Hanson. She's a chiropractor who has been in practice for over 30 years, specializes in pediatrics, and has an amazing resource, connectmybrain.com. You guys, I was just fascinated because, our children had some developmental delays, and it was just to listen to her experience, her solutions, just everything that's going on. And you guys, I am pissed at the CDC because they have literally lowered the expectations and milestones for our children in their development. That is absolutely ridiculous. What they're calling normal is not normal at all. It might be common, but it's not normal. And not only that, did you know that they took crawling off a developmental milestone? That to me is insane. So just get ready, and you guys are going to love Dr. Laura Hanson. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our edition of the Meehan Mission Podcast. I am so excited for this topic today and for our speaker. And a real quick hello, Dr. Laura Hanson.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Okay, so I'm just going to tell everybody why this topic is really important to me, because Jim and I had 5 children, and, their ages are 33 to 22. So we really hit the vaccine mandates and everything, right out of the gate. And our children were heavily vaccinated. We did stop by the HPV vaccine, but, it was before we knew any better. Mm-hmm. And looking back, I recall some of the milestones that my children were supposed to be hitting that, they weren't hitting them, and the pediatrician was telling me that was normal. Mm-hmm. So when I found out that Dr. Hanson talks about how the CDC has actually changed the milestones, I was like, I have got to get her on the podcast because I really want to share the information she has. So I'm just going to give you one little example. Was my 4th child, Macy, did not speak until after she was 3 years old.
Oh, wow.
And the pediatrician said that was normal because she had older siblings doing all the talking for her. And I bought that. Mm-hmm. I bought that. And I look back now and, it wasn't normal. It was common. And I think there's a very big difference in normal and common. So, Dr. Hanson, if you will just, I don't even know where you want to start on this, but I know that you are an expert in this area, and especially when it comes to the CDC and what they've done to the milestones. So will you please just help educate our community on what we're talking about?
Well, it's my pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to share this information, because there's still moms like you who hear this kind of information, that it's normal, and they don't know. And then later on, they find out. And I think one of the big common ones is crawling. Parents even today are told that it's not necessary for your child to crawl. So that one's even been removed from their new standards. And I did, back when this happened, it's been now about 3.5 years ago, I really got very frustrated because you already saw so many children behind the 8 ball. I have been working with kids for 30 years, and I've watched the scale of ages from maybe around puberty time down to school age to now it's all the toddlers and babies that are already demonstrating problems with the acquisition of skill. And when you have a little baby, they can't tell you. So you have to monitor this. So you'll see me look over here just because I have a couple of slides and we're happy to share them with you all. But when the CDC changed this, let me give you a few examples. Language is a big one. Mm-hmm. As you even mentioned, they brushed it off to the older siblings. I hear in bilingual families, it's normal because you speak 2 languages. And there's nothing true about that. So where a baby should start communicating is 7 weeks old. And they're doing it with coos and oos. And that is your vowel sounds. So you first learn your vowel sounds, then you start to around 5 months, put some consonant sounds to that in order to start having a single syllable word like da and ma. Now over on the CDC side, they're saying make some sound other than crying at around 2 months, and around 4 months start the oohs and the ahs. So the vowel sounds then would be closer to about 9 weeks late. And in baby land, that's really what we want to look at. What is the amount of delay time? If we can get in there during those times, we can begin to shift. So why is that important? First of all, language is giving you an indication that there's a higher brain function going on. Mm-hmm. When you come into the world, you're fully formed, but you're not fully functioning. You're down in your brainstem. And so that experience of life is beginning to build the brain in order for you to have a higher brain function, such as language. So language has to start somewhere. Now, the oohs and the ahs are only part of it. What else would have to be a part of it is the ear. So when you come into the world, you actually hear low frequency sound and you acquire middle and high over the first 3 years of life. So this has to be an orchestration. And the eyes and the ears don't work by themselves. The vestibular system has to be part of it. And your vestibular system is inside of your ear. So we're talking about like an orchestra of neurological events in order just to bring about sound, bring it into the brain, and allow it to work up into a circuit. And there's so many other things that are going on at that time that you can't isolate any function. You just can't. Children with their milestones, this is like a little blueprint for someone to follow in order to kind of be on the outside of that baby going, are you supposed to do what you're supposed to be doing? And at the end, I'll share even more. We have an app and you can put the app in your hand. It's a free app. What is my child supposed to be doing when? That's how important it is. That's how passionate I am about it, that I put together an app and I go around and I try to educate on this. And over on our website, you can actually have a free download, Dr. Hanson's Guide to Developmental Milestones, and you can have a document, quick reference. It doesn't have everything on it, but it's going to take you from a newborn to 6 years old.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, this is how important it is that we have to know what to look for. The next part goes into like, okay, what about movement? So babies do not come into the world reading, writing, and doing arithmetic. And we don't identify that there's an issue until a kid is in school. Well, my goodness, that's like 5 years you've already been on the planet. And so learning cannot be the gold standard of being able to identify if a child is on target. In fact, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is I wish we could get into even daycares, pre-K classes, things like that, and start doing developmental assessments and stop waiting until these children enter first grade. Because by the time they enter first grade, teachers have an expectation And if your child isn't matching up to that expectation, they're going to tell you. And it starts to make moms and dads just feel so terrible. Okay. So movement. Right. By 4 weeks, a baby should be able to hold up their head. Okay. The CDC says around 8 weeks. That's a whole month's difference in baby length.
So they've changed that recommendation. At one time, were they earlier than 8 weeks? And then now
it used to be 4. Yeah. And that's head writing, which begins right at the time of birth, that baby starts demonstrating, hey, I'm in a new environment. I'm in gravity. And everybody usually gets really excited. Oh, look, they're holding up their head. And that's got to be the first thing. In fact,
8 weeks. I'm sorry. That's 2 months old. And your baby's not holding their head up at 8. Okay. So I'm just fuming here. Yeah. and I'm fuming because, I mean, you talk about the expectations, and sorry to ruin your train of thought, but I'm just like thinking, so the expectations of going into kindergarten and preschool and when you're going to read, but we have the CDC that's changing these, what these milestones and when we should expect them. To me, that is so contradictory to the fact that we as people should, with the technology and the nutrition that's available and, clean water, sanitation, and absolutely everything, that we should be in reverse of expectations. We shouldn't be delaying these expectations. So, and I'm sure
we don't want them early or late. We want them timely.
Right. But I mean, the fact that they're pushing them out, and I'm sure we'll get to talk about this, but I want to know your thought process on why are they pushing out these milestones? So, and I'm sure
they are normalizing developmental delay.
But why are they normalizing it? Because that's not normal.
Because there's so many children that are delayed. 1 in 6 kids has got some kind of altered development.
1 in 6?
1 in 6. And you've got somewhere around 1 in 2024 are going to be labeled autistic. And out in California, they've actually got a ratio of 1 in 13. Now, come on. What has happened?
Come on, people.
And we've really got to wake up about this, because you're also talking about generations of people. And we already were on this trajectory because autism exploded in the 80s. And those were children are now adults. And if this is what becomes the norm, who is actually developing correctly? Who's going to run the country?
Right.
What's going to happen?
Military. Yeah.
What's going to happen to really the human race? And like I said, I've literally seen in practice 30 years ago, it was older kids that were demonstrating more issues. And now it's the toddlers. I've got more toddlers in my practice than I've had in like 5 years. And now I've got toddlers, I've got school age, and I got some teenagers. So if we don't look at this stuff now, it is time of the essence too.
Yes.
You have developmental windows. And when those windows are open, you are influencing maturation. So the gut's so you have typical milestones, but you also have like some micro milestones that are always working in between. Like your gut is going to mature by age 2. Your immune system is going to mature by age 3. So if we're saying it's no big deal if you don't push up on your elbows at 4 months when we used to say 3 months, or we don't even really talk about crawling. Crawling is not even listed anymore. And crawling.
I don't get that one.
Well, I don't either, but you have pediatricians that tell parents that it's not necessary. And just in case somebody in your audience is going, well, why do I have to crawl? So your child starts off with a homologous movement, meaning everything is moving, both arms, both legs. And then I begin to go to a homolateral movement, and I'm literally split right down the middle because I'm laying down neurological columns in my brain. Okay. And when those columns need to start communicating with one another, then you have to crawl to create that communication. So for example, the need to talk is on the right side of the brain. The work of talk is on the left side of the brain. If both sides of my brain are not talking to each other, I may not perceive the need to talk. And that's the other big picture behind all this language delay. Because you come into the world, you are right brain dominant, and then it all shifts around that 18 to 24 months to the left-hand side. Why we call the left-hand side the intellectual side. The right-hand side is the emotional side. But when these kids go off course, what's one of the most common things that we see? They have emotional dysregulation because the right side of the brain is actually dampened. So wonder if my brain just doesn't perceive the need to talk because there's already asymmetry going on in the brain. And that's why a developmental assessment is so important. That's why having a little checklist, knowing, okay, here's when my child's supposed to be doing this. And then if something isn't going the right way, you reach out to somebody that does developmental work. That's what I do. And you ask a question. You know, you ask a question. Hey, I noticed that my child, it's 13 months. I know they should have walked by 12. Is that an issue? Well, 1 month in baby land is an issue. So what we're going to do, we're not going to put a label on it. You ask why. Why isn't the baby getting up? The baby should be getting up in gravity. The baby should be able to take a step. And that's the other part that I think I get so frustrated by is we just so quick in our traditional healthcare model. We're just so quick to label rather than asking why.
Right. But I even love how in the very beginning you talked about this orchestration and, you know, and you're right. If one little piece of the orchestra is off, that's going to mess up, you know, the whole masterpiece. And we just, you know, and the whole asking why. And I'm going back to my sweet little Macy. You know, the doctor gave me a why, and the why was, oh, well, because all the other children are speaking for her. And I accepted that. And, you know, to me, that was such a lie when I look back at it. I was like, no, that's not the why. I mean, I'm sure.
She should have actually been talking over everybody, she should have had that drive and motivation to just jump right in and be like everybody else.
Yeah. Which she has now, by the way. She's got that now.
Good. That's well, it is really important to keep in mind what these things do. And they're demonstrating neurology is what they're demonstrating. So children, when you assess them, you're going to assess 5 categories, and that's gross motor, fine motor, social communication, and adaptation. Okay. So lots of times people might see, well, they do really well over here. And okay, I'm kind of questioning this, but the thing that's really happening for the child is they're growing to adapt more than they're actually building their brain. And adaptation really does come at a cost. We don't want overly adapting. Now, to clarify, sure, I want you to be able to adapt to a new situation. If a child cannot adapt to a new situation, that would take us back to like the primitive reflexes, like the Moro reflex, and we can talk about those another time. But primitive reflexes are also in this mix because everything has timing. Just like the milestones have timing, Primitive reflexes have timing. You have developmental open windows. They have timing. Everything about a child is timing. And so children, that's the only library they have. So if you and I had to go through something, we have an extensive library, just like we were trying to figure out our mic situation before we got started.
Yeah.
We know how to find resources. I was over here asking questions on Riverside. You were reaching out to your person, and we acted. So we took our library and we knew what to do. A child's library is very different. First of all, it's their point of time that they've been on the planet. So if we're talking about a 3 or 4-year-old, they've only been on the planet 3 to 4 years. That library is very small. And what happens to children, why we do see so much delay, is that they have a tendency to regress, not just do something else. So they regress because their library is only got the earliest pieces in it, like what neurology was put in motion in the womb, which is withdrawal reflexes, primitive reflexes, and then when they come out, they start their postural reflexes. So reflexes are the largest content to their library. Now, let me put that into an example that we could all appreciate.
Okay.
Let's say something happened to us as an adult. Wonder if I'm not going to say I never like to speak anything over myself, but an adult had a stroke or a heart attack. Okay. That adult would actually go back to their reflexes, because reflexes are the rudimentary place of all learning. So if an adult goes back there, and that's how they build the rehab. So like a stroke impacting one side of the brain, the opposite side of the body, rehab is going to come in. And one of the first things that they're going to demonstrate is they're going to have a palmar reflex again. You put your finger in your baby's hand and the baby closes it. In an adult, they're going to call it pathological. In a baby, it's a normal reflex. Okay. So reflexes are the foundational piece. If I'm 3 or 4 years old, that's all I've got. That's why there's always this tendency. If something is going on for a child, they regress. They lose something. And that's why it is so important to keep some kind of monitoring system over, is my child meeting their milestones, and are they typical? So let's go back to crawling for a second. Crawling has a very distinct posture. It's hands and knees. It's not hands and feet, and it's not scooting on your bottom. So I don't know if you ever saw this commercial, the Pampers commercial with the little girl shuffling on her bottom. She looks perfectly happy, but she can't get into the typical posture. Why? Well, if I put myself in that kind of a posture and I have to lift my head so that I can see, she's avoiding that posture, but she's still motoring around. So even though she's still motoring around, it's not typical. So it's not the same input going into the neurology, and there's always a reason why. And that particular situation, baby probably was either C-section, or when the baby was trying to come out, it either something got interrupted or they used instrumentation. And it's a very common thing that they actually get the back of their head called the occiput, which is in 4 pieces as a newborn. Sometimes that area gets locked up. So that would cause the child not to want to pick up their head.
Is that something that's going to, do they outgrow it?
You're not going to outgrow it. You need somebody to, and I'm so glad you put it that way, because that's another thing that most parents are told is your child is going to grow out of this, and the child's going to adapt. But what is that adaptation?
Yeah.
And this is going to be a bit of a bone structure component, but like your occiput, the back of your head, when you're born, it's in 4 pieces. This would be your brain stem.
Okay.
Over here would be your vagus nerve.
Mm.
And your vagus nerve would actually be locked up. So what might you see? A colicky baby, a reflux baby, a baby that really just can't settle down, and you're a parent that would just be exhausted because your baby is crying all the time. And then eventually, as the baby grows, there might be a little bit of a give. But that's where I think chiropractic is beautiful, because people that specialize in pediatrics, you just go in and do some cranial work and you resolve it. And that's the idea behind this stuff. There's always a reason why. We must ask that question. Why? What happened? What can we do? And that, like most babies being born in a hospital setting, these people see firsthand if there was a trauma, and they should be recommending, we don't do this, but you need to seek somebody out that focuses on developmental care just to make sure everything's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's one of our biggest things is little tiny baby pediatric chiropractic care. If you can get some hands on that little baby, it's like it's so important. So important.
It's simple. It's simple at that age. It's very simple at that age.
Many people aren't even aware that there's chiropractic care for infants and newborns. And, my grandkids, they go to infant chiropractors, after they're born and even as they're growing up. And so we've learned a lot over the years. and that's really what it takes. It takes, you know better, you do better, and you share. I mean, and that's really what I always, that's why I love doing podcasts with people, is as we're all starting to learn about the alternative therapies and, the different healthcare professionals that are out there, that you want to share this with people. And because the more you know, the better you do. And so I'm so appreciative. But this stuff is fascinating me, Dr. Hanson. I absolutely love it. So tell us more.
Well, so we've got some ideas about how language really started much earlier, and the CDC has changed it. Expected movement started much earlier, and the CDC has changed it. So my personal opinion, from everything that's been going on, especially with Children's Health Defense and Kennedy, we are finally in an arena that we can talk about things. And no matter what, that's what I also think is incredibly important. Acting like that topics are taboo when they are really impacting the health of everyone. I just think it's really important that is really starting to fall apart. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and be able to talk about this stuff. And I do that. I have a podcast as well, and I talk about this stuff all the time because I'm really trying to help people understand there really are signposts. Milestones are considered signposts of a child's neurological development. I want us to move away from the idea of academia and realize that we're talking about neurology. I can take a child into an assessment, even a 12-year-old, and I can do a neurological assessment that helps me see how far back does this problem originate. So an example, and I'm going to give you and your audience a couple of things that you can do at home to just kind of check out your kid, and I'll give you the ages of them just to kind of help you realize where they should be, just in case that they're not. So a jumping jack. My gosh, the simple little jumping jack. So everybody see a jumping jack in their mind. So I jump open and my hands go up. So there's timing. Are my hands and my legs moving in sync? Why is that important? Well, when you come into this world, the very first thing you do is pick up your head. And then you start to go prone on elbows. So you're starting to get what we call the proximal joints, the joints closest to the trunk. Okay. And then it stretches out to the hands. Now I'm getting into the middle of my trunk. Then I get to my pelvis and I start sitting, and then I start getting on my hands and knees and I start rocking, and then I start crawling. So the legs come on after the rest, the above. And like when a baby grabs their toes, they grab their toes around 6 months. They now realize, ooh, this whole thing is mine. At 6 months, that's when they have captured their whole body. Okay. So the legs come on afterwards. If I did a jumping jack on a 12-year-old and they're like just moving the hands and then they're jumping with their legs straight up and down, I can already tell you 4 or 5 years old, we already started to have a problem. I've got the concept of jumping, but he's 12. How much neurological integration has this child lost? And this particular child that I'm talking about has gross language delay. And the parents do believe he was on track until he got his MMR. And after that, he regressed. But they didn't find me to this year. So now he's in puberty. Now, that is to our advantage because it is an open window. And when there is an open window, if we go through it like a Clydesdale horse, we can make some changes. Can I make him perfect? I don't know. We got to look at a few things. We got to make sure the chemistry is completely right. We got to feed him the right way. And we got to work those circuits with intensity and a threshold. And that's when the brain will start to give us a change. You have to have enough time in there in order for those circuits to actually grow. And, you know, here's the thing. People talk about 21 days to a new habit, right? Well, that works if you're a toddler. If you want to work on something, you put your mind to it. And I bet all of us would agree in about a week, you go, oh yeah, okay, I like it. Because in about a week, if you put a lot of attention to something, you actually bloom a bud in your brain. Okay. But what happens to many adults is they think they have it at that point and they stop driving the practice. Well, guess what happens to the bud? It shrivels away and goes away. You have to nurture the bud. You have to nurture the bud to let it grow and then begin to feed into the rest of the circuit. And that's going to be a minimum of 10 to 12 weeks with a pretty high intensity. Now, it may be different for little ones. You may get a little bit more faster, but everything is a different story for every person. Yeah. But it is important to realize that it does take time. One of the biggest issues is that 21 days can be for a toddler, 6 to 8 months can be for a school age kid. But once you've reached 14 years old, it is thousands of repetitions to make a change. And if that person only does one thing a day, you're looking at 3.5 years, and no one is going to stick with something for 3.5 years. Right. So we want to teach this idea of neurological stacking, because if you really stopped and think about what does it really look like when a child is walking? Okay, my feet are on the ground. My arms are moving after the age of 4. Then I got to keep my head up. I have to look around. I have to be able to pay attention to where I'm stepping. There's always many things going on at the same time because that's the way the brain works. So if we bring that into the therapeutic approach, to help make a change, things do happen faster. Now, let me give your audience a few things to think about what they can look for. Okay. So we talked about the jumping jack. The other thing that by 4 years old, you should be able to hop on one foot. So have them hop on one foot, then get them to change to the other foot. If they can do both sides, great. But what I see a lot of times is they can hop on one foot and then they go to try the other side. They get a bounce, but the other foot comes down. They get a bounce, but the other foot comes down. So there's an asymmetry going on. Okay. Doesn't mean that any of these one things by themselves is horrific, but these are just some things to look at. Okay. Another thing, bicycles.
Yeah.
Do not put your child on a balance bike. Those things are so detrimental to the development of what we really need. The very first thing that a little toddler should be able to do, you know, those scooters that are low to the ground and they usually have 4 wheels. They should be able, they're still in diapers and they're motoring around the house. So now they're actually using the foot. One's going this way, the other one's getting ready. So we're getting that sequence of foot movement. But anytime we ever move our body, we're also activating the trunk, and that's getting the transverse abdominis active. And you need that muscle active to do potty training. So we take a little toddler into the bathroom. They have no idea what you're doing. You sit them down on something, and over time, the pressure, because that's a neurological track, the pressure of sitting on something all of a sudden makes them tinkle. We throw a party and they're like, whoa, whoa, something's going on. Something's going on. And it's the repetition. And then they start to notice, there's a little feeling right before I tinkle. And that's the connection that's happening neurologically to teach a child how to potty train. But you must be able to ride a tricycle before you can expect your child to potty train. Don't do it too early. Yeah. There's some people that, keep doing this with kids in diapers in their 2 because they want to get them out of diapers. But many times, I'm not going to say 100%, but many times those children regress back into wetting the bed because it's a little premature and it didn't allow something else to finish. And again, maybe we can have another conversation sometime on primitive reflexes, because that's the common thing that drives bedwetting is spinal galant primitive reflex. So let's fast forward. We're not riding tricycles. Everybody in the neighborhood has a balance bike. These kids are going tap, 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 wee, tap, 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 wee. They're not using the foot dynamics. You go then and try to put them on a regular bike. They can't do the movement. They fall, and now they avoid. And any child.
Oh, interesting. I've never even, the balance bikes were not around when my kids were little, so I don't have any experience with them, but I've definitely seen them. Yeah.
And they came out because we have so many kids that can't ride bikes, because we have so many kids delayed, 1 in 6, and we want all these kids to be like all the other kids. So I don't mean anything terrible towards them, but it's not making the neurology work like it's supposed to. So I was just talking to a mom today, and Santa's bringing this little 4-year-old a bike, and I go, well, does it have training wheels?
What kind of a bike?
I go, does it have training wheels? And she goes, no, he can do a balance bike, no problem. And I go, Santa needs to put training wheels on his bike because he already has a gravitational issue. He walks on his toes. And toe walkers, they're afraid to put the foot all the way down because they're afraid they're going to fall. And that's another reflex, the tonic labyrinthine reflex.
Okay, that's interesting to know because I have many toe walkers.
Yeah, there's many pieces to this. It just, it's so overlapped. Okay, the last thing that I'll leave your audience with. By 4 years old, your child should declare lateralization. What does that mean? So remember, I was talking about how you lay the neurological columns down in the brain. We get to see on the outside, how organized are you? So your eye, your ear, your hand, your foot should all be on the same side for dominance. So take a paper towel roll, toilet paper roll, no paper on it. Just set it in front of your child and say, put this up to your favorite eye and watch what they do. Okay?
Okay.
Watch what hand they use. What eye do they put it to? You probably already know what handedness your child is, but if you don't, ask them to write their name. Watch how they hold the pen. Do they wrap all the way around it? That's a palmar reflex. And these are the kids that hate to write anything because that's like the death grip on a pen. Okay. Then we want to put down our phones, put this up to your favorite ear, and then roll a ball to their foot. Do they kick with that same side? All of that should be on the same side. The real common one that stands out is eyes and ears being on opposite side. That's really what dyslexia can become. So even in the world of dyslexia, they just want to talk about reading and writing. Well, again, you're not born reading and writing. There are steps to get there. And so you have to be able to have this organization in order to build your letterbox. You don't even have a place on your brain that's called the reading part. It's actually called a letterbox. And it's what allows us to recognize letters, learn sound, and then put them together. Okay. Mm. The child that has the ear on the opposite side, this poor kid goes through so much. Have you ever been on your cell phone and you heard yourself talk after you spoke?
Yeah, like the echo.
Yes.
Kind of like an echo. Yeah.
That's like their world. They're always hearing things slightly later. So if the brain thought you should be on the right, it's going in the left. It's got to get over to the right just to be heard. Mm-hmm. Then we process opposite side, regardless of dominance. So that child is always hearing milliseconds afterwards. And the teacher may go up and say, hey, Johnny, put your paper in the box. And Johnny's standing there and not doing anything because he's still trying to understand what he heard. And then the teacher comes back and says, Johnny, come on. And now Johnny is deer in the headlights. So now we've created a very heightened, stressed little child. All because nobody knows, did they get wired up right? So
wow,
this is the blueprint. This is a blueprint to tell you if your child is on target.
Mm-hmm. Girl, this is like, this is just like such a wow. I am so glad. I'm going to have you on more, if that's okay.
Oh, I do.
And so I'm not to pick on my sweet Macy, who is now an adult with 2 beautiful children. Oh, but I'm going to tell you, she is right hand dominant, played sports, everything, and she's a lefty. So I'm like, I just keep thinking about all the opposite things. And anyway, we lead very healthy lifestyles now, everybody. Our nutrition is on point, and I encourage that for everybody. Getting your exercise in, there's just all the environmental factors that affect us nowadays and limit all those bad things. So, the good news, Dr. Hanson, is that people do have some of these, maybe not hitting milestones and everything. And you talked about catching them within that window. And why it is so important to start monitoring and measuring, I guess, checking in and finding that out, and then find a professional like Dr. Hanson that can help your child, overcome some of these things, or I guess maybe help, get back on track, something like that. It's
exactly.
It's just so fascinating. And even, the whole awareness, I would love to see the CDC maybe, get a little bit more up to date and, get back on correct milestones for kids so we can get back on track to where we really need to be instead of just, kind of like ignoring the issue and just pushing it off. And whether it's to make parents feel better or just to cover up anything that's coming out of the CDC, I'm not sure where that's going to go. So, but I appreciate you so much. This has been not only information is great. I think to me, it was like entertaining just to learn all of these new things. I will make sure that people know how to contact you. I look forward to doing this again.
Good.
And and until then, everybody out in the community, please share these things. Again, the more we are aware of what's happening with our children and their developmental milestones and what's happening within like the industry of the medical community and where we can find resources, really that's what's important. So if you don't mind,
I would encourage everybody to go over to my website, connectmybrain.com. It's a simple name, connectmybrain.com. If you have any questions, just fill out a form and I will be the one that will call you and we can have a conversation.
That would be so great. And I'll make sure that we leave that in the description below too. So Dr. Hanson, have a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you for joining us. And for everybody else, see you on the next Meehan Mission Podcast.